Looking at one specific type of protein, enzymes. Enzymes are our biological catalysts. Remember that with our catalysts, they help reduce that activation energy that would be required to break and form new bonds. They do this by providing an alternative pathway in either providing the kinetic energy or proper orientation for the breaking and forming of bonds. Enzymes aid in these chemical processes but are not consumed by. Therefore, they are constantly being reused. With enzymes, they are very specific to the job in which they are serving. Their process is to either break a bond, transfer a bond, have some specific change that will occur in the chemical compound it is interacting with. And we're going to look at the different classes of these enzymes. Generically, how do enzymes work? So enzymes will combine with a substrate. We're going to go with my artistry skills. Alrighty. So I think of Pac-Man as my enzyme. This is a three-dimensional structure that is going to have an active site. That active site is unique to the chemical compound that is going to interact with to help promote the chemical reaction that needs to take place. That chemical compound is typically called a substrate as a generic term because there's so many different types that can occur. That substrate needs to be able to interact with that site. So what happens is that substrate will enter that active site, and that is what we call the enzyme-substrate complex. The enzyme is going to serve its purpose. It's going to make a new functional group. It's going to transfer a group. It's going to break a bond. It's going to form a bond, whatever it happens to be. And once that has occurred, the enzyme and the new product is going to separate. That enzyme will now go back and pick up another substrate. And whatever role this new product has, it can go and get modified again. It can go serve its purpose. It all depends on the type of biochemical reaction we are talking about. So this is the very simplistic understanding of how enzymes work. Now I know all you ever needed was my Pac-Man drawing to make you completely understand enzymes. You're welcome. Just kidding. So diving a little bit deeper into those active sites and the importance of their shape and the different models in which we investigate. This first type of model is called the lock and key model. So it's very similar, right? So if we have a lock and a key, it's such a weird key. It doesn't have all those ups and downs, but it's the only lock I could find in my son's bedroom. All right. So this key is very specific to this lock that allows it to then open it up, right? Whereas if I have a different key and it goes in there, if I'm lucky it might go in there, it cannot open. All right, so even though I could slide the key in there, it's got different tongues or grooves. You can think of those as different functional groups or different branches, and it might fit, but it's not the right branching that goes into that key. And so even if we take a different key and we know it's a lock, it's not going to fix. It's not going to fit. This theory is it's one substrate to one enzyme. This is very limiting because that means we need so many enzymes for all of the different substrates and biochemical processes that occur in our body. The more common model, the one that we believe is the majority of our enzymes, is called the induced fit. So the induced fit model also has been called like the hand glove model means there's a general shape within that active site that will conform and move around the substrate. So like hand and glove. So this is my daughter's glove, right? It's not gonna like necessarily fit my hands, but it's got the same general shape. So it's going to conform to my hand, even though it's not made for my size. But because we have the same general shape, it is going to work. This is the current running theory because there are certain substrates that are going to have similar enough, so we don't have to make as many different enzymes. Makes it a little bit more productive. Here, looking at a more space-filling model, we have that substrate, and it gets a little bit more difficult once we really go outside of that artistry piece of finding that active site. But we have this active site, and you can see how when the substrate goes in, that active site is going to conform around that substrate. So that is that induced model fit that allows this enzyme and substrate to interact. A computer modeling rendition of the same thing. Again, this is what we use to help study and understand the interactions that are going to be occurring when we have that substrate in that enzyme. What happens once that substrate is in that enzyme is you're going to have some interactions occurring. So note on this structure, this substrate is going into this active site. This active site changes its conformation, so its configuration, the shape in which it has, because the R groups, or the backbone of the protein that makes up that enzyme, is going to interact with atoms and groups on the substrate itself, allowing the changes to occur. Looking at the 6 major classes of enzymes. By classes, we are talking about the type of reaction or change that an enzyme will perform on the incoming substrate. You can look at the name of the class and have a really good understanding now of the reactions that these will perform. Our first class is that oxidoreductase. Oxy, reduct, oxidation reduction reactions? Who would have known? Remember that if we're going to have an oxidation reduction reaction, so if we're going to go through oxidation, we're going to see an increase in the carbon-oxygen bonds and a decrease in our carbon-hydrogen bond. Reduction is going to be the opposite, where we see a decrease in our carbon-oxygen bonds and an increase in our carbon-hydrogen bond. In order for these reactions to take place, because if oxidation is happening, reduction needs to occur elsewhere. You can't just have one of these processes. Therefore, we need a cofactor. A cofactor is another compound, ion, something that will help catalyze and support this reaction. If our substrate is going to undergo oxidation, so looking here at glycerol. So glycerol is a 3-carbon compound that has 3 OH groups. On carbon 2, it is going from an alcohol to a carbonyl. Therefore, we are seeing an increase in our carbon-oxygen bonds and a decrease in our carbon-hydrogen bond, which means that this carbon underwent oxidation. Those protons, electrons, have to go somewhere. That is where the cofactor comes in, this other entity that can then undergo reduction. We have already seen this compound, NAD+, our high energy electron carrier, and when it becomes NADH, that compound is being reduced. So there's a carbon on there that's being reduced, which means it's actually seeing an increase in the number of carbon-hydrogen bonds. Looking at the enzyme name, this can help us identify what's going on. So we have our substrate. The original compound was glycerol. So glycerol is what's going to be going into this enzyme, and it's going to undergo dehydrogenase. We can break this name down. D means without removal, like to dehydrate. Hydrogen, remove hydrogen. And then the ase is the suffix we use to describe an enzyme. So we are going to be removing hydrogens from glycerol. That is how we can break down those names of these enzymes without really needing to know in depth of what's going on. You can just break those terms down to understand the general process that's going to occur. This is a huge skill set when you're looking at terms in physiology, anatomy, or any of those cellular molecular biology terms, drug interactions. That a skill set of looking at a name and breaking it into its actions will serve you well. Our next class of enzymes are transferases. Wonder what they do. They transfer. So they're going to be transferring functional groups. Here, we are actually going to dive a little deeper into this reaction in a later video when we look at transamination, or the digestion of an amino acid. But what this means is it's going to transfer a functional group. Here, leucine is an amino acid. On that amino acid, we've got that amine group. So this enzyme is called a branched chain aminotransferase. So that's the BCAT. It catalyzes the reversible transamination of branched amino acids, which means amino acids that have the R group, so anything besides glycine, into their respective branched chain keto acids, which we'll talk about what keto acids are in a later video. But we are going to transfer this ammonia group onto this enzyme. It is releasing that alpha keto acid here, so we don't need to worry about that. Based off this arrow, it is going to transfer this amine group to what's called alpha ketoglutarate. So we can see that alpha ketoglutarate gained that amine and it converted it to glutamate. So we just see this transfer of this functional group. I am not going to ask you to know these names of these compounds, but I want you to be able to tell that an amine started on one compound and it went to another. It was transferred. That's what you need to be able to grasp from this process. Our third class, hydrolases. Hydrolyze. Enzymes that help and support hydrolysis. We have used hydrolysis already. So these are enzymes that are going to help break those amide bonds, like in our proteins that we have talked about, esters that are in our triacylglycerols or our lipids, and then phosphodiester, which is in our DNA. That is the bond between our DNA nucleotides or RNA nucleotides. So these enzymes are very specific in breaking apart these functional bonds. What is occurring in this image is here we have histidine, aspartic acid, and serine. So those are the R groups that are in the active site of this enzyme. Those are going to interact with what we are putting in. Here we have a generic amino acid, hence the R groups. Here is that amide bond. We know that the amide bond can be hydrolyzed. It can be broken up to separate the carboxylic acid and the amine functional groups. So the way in which this works is this interaction with one of the R groups of the enzyme is going to help catalyze and break apart that amide bond, separating those two functional groups, essentially those two amino acids. It's hydrolyzing. This is occurring in that aqueous state. So yes, water is part of this process because we need to put water back in to reform that carboxylic acid and that amine. We just don't draw it with this enzyme structure because we know it's there. The fourth one we are looking at are lyases. With our lyases, this one you may not have heard of before, though it's very, very common, and we actually have looked at these reactions that have taken place. The root term ly means to degrade or reduce. So here, the general rule of thumb is in addition to a double bond. So we're taking a double bond and breaking it apart, like we had done with our addition reactions of our alkenes. Or the elimination to form a double bond, we're going to remove something to form a new double bond. The processes that these can occur with is removing water from a structure, removing CO2 from a structure, or adding something else to that double bond. All of these fall under the lyases. In this example, we have tryptophan, which is an amino acid. Not that we need to know this first one, but we can see this hydroxylase adds a hydroxyl group to the tryptophan. We're not talking about that for the lyases, but it's just fun. That's a transferase, in case you're curious, because it's transferring a functional group onto the tryptophan. All right, what I wanted to talk about was this aromatic amino acid decarboxylase. Decarboxylase remove a carboxyl group. All amino acids have a carboxyl group. So removal of that carboxyl group, you can see that it is now gone. This means that when we were talking, especially during carbohydrate catabolism, every time we lost a CO2 molecule, that was done by a decarboxylase enzyme. Super cool. Our fifth group is looking at isomerases. I bet you cannot guess what this does. I gave it to you. So it's an enzyme that allows for an isomer to form. Remember, isomers have the same molecular formula, just different rearrangement of the atoms. Whether it is a constitutional isomer or a stereoisomer, it does not matter. They work with all of those categories. Here we have our DHAP. We saw this when we were talking about glycolysis, where fructose 1,6-bisphosphate breaks into the 3-carbon compound. DHAP has the molecular formula C3H5O2. It is a ketone, hence dihydroxyketone. Then it can undergo a rearrangement to G3P. So G3P is what continues down through glycolysis to make pyruvate. G3P's molecular formula is also C3H5O2. The difference is this is now an aldehyde. So same molecular formula, just different rearrangement of those bonds. The last major class of enzymes are ligases. This again may be one that you have not heard of before. So looking at the lig or lig, this term means to bind or tie together. So it's joining two molecules. There will be a bond formation, typically going to be supported by ATP because to form bonds we need energy. In this example, we have our two DNA molecules, and we've highlighted where that bond is going to be formed. Now, they need energy to do this. So this is going to be performed by what's called DNA ligase. So we take our two nucleotides, and you can then see that we made that bond between those two DNA nucleotides. This is that phosphodiester bond that we had talked about that hydrolases can break down. But just showing you that we're taking two monomers and forming that or that building polymer, that is going to be done in our body with enzymes in the ligase category.